every step this administration has taken after the death of Renee Good has been to blame the residents of Minnesota, blame the leaders in Minnesota and in Minneapolis, and to excuse and to send a signal to its agents on the ground that they can act however they want to. I think there was a term used, that they had absolute immunity. That term doesn't exist in the law, and they don't have absolute immunity. But like you said, the cruelty, yes, it is the point. But I'd like to remind everyone watching, what were those law enforcement officers doing, eating and then arresting, these people working the restaurant? If that doesn't show a lack of urgency around their supposed mission, I don't know what else would, right? If you're really trying to execute an immigration enforcement action, you're not going to casually eat in a restaurant and then go and approach your targets. This is just unheard of. This isn't immigration enforcement. It's not law enforcement. It's political intimidation. And I'm going to keep saying this. The president has weaponized the Department of Homeland Security and federal law enforcement to act as his own federal police force. If we don't name that for what it is, we'll keep falling into this trap of thinking that this is just an immigration issue. It's actually a constitutional issue about state police power versus federal police power. And there's not supposed to be this type of federal police power.
Can I just ask a question? I want to stay on that point for a second, Tim, because arrest them for what? Did they have a subpoena? Had they identified the workers in that restaurant as gang members or as felons or as individuals who are engaged in other illegal activity in this country, maybe belonging to a gang? You sat your ass down at their restaurant and ate their food. And then you come back with what? Where were the warrants? When you looked at that server in the face, did you know, oh, there's a criminal, let me go check some database because I recognize them from some other investigation? This is, it's not just the cruelty is the point. It is just the sheer insanity that they think the rest of us are deaf, dumb, and stupid to what they're doing. I just don't understand how that happens, Tim. I mean, I've listened to you, and just sort of just put the right finger on the pulse here about what this really is in this moment.
Well, it's political, right? Like, this is a political effort, and it's also performative, right? It's politics and it's performance. It's not public safety. That's not what they're doing. They're saying that they're here to go after the worst, and they barely even pay lip service to that anymore. If they wanted to, figure out a way to just go after the worst people that have committed crimes here, they'd do what you're saying. They'd go get a warrant, right? If they wanted to deport the most people, but with the least disruption to communities, right, where there was no performance in it, what they would do is they would go to the big donors, right? They would go to the owners of, construction companies and agricultural plants, and they'd say, sorry, we can't, we need to come look at your employment records and go that way. But they don't want to do that because they don't want to anger, big supporters of the president. Mm-hmm. So instead what they're doing is this, they're going into these neighborhoods, they're going into the communities, they're menacing people. They want to scare people, and they also want to escalate. This Tim Walz, Fry DOJ effort is an effort to escalate, right? They want a response so they can crack down harder. That's what they're doing. It's politics and performance, and it's an effort to try to gain more authoritarian power for themselves. And that's why they're going about it this way. And I think it's just important to be blunt about that.
That is, in fact, the point, Andre. I agree with Tim. Look, I have to tell you, I'm struggling to see what it is going to take for the Republicans on Capitol Hill are a lost cause to me. I'm not going to wait for them. Mm-hmm. But some of the business leaders that know they have the president's ear, what is it going to take for people to speak up? Because as Governor Walz laid out, first it was, we have all these examples of people that the government has targeted. But this one, obstructed justice for what? How so? In what way, shape, or form? I just think of this James Baldwin quote. He warned us that the great danger is not that people don't see what's happening. It's that they are taught to accept it. If the business community, if lay people in the streets of this country who have been speaking up, but if the business community and other leaders in this country, educational leaders, leaders at law firms who have been willing to stand up to Trump on other things, some of them not so much, but there are some bright spots out there, and I'm not just talking about Mark Elias. People have to stand up, because We are not on a slippery slope to authoritarianism, baby. We are living in the opening act.
We begin tonight with breaking news in Minnesota and the showdown between the Trump administration and Democratic leaders on the ground. The Justice Department is now investigating Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey. A source confirms this to CNN. Now, the investigation apparently centers on possible obstruction of federal law enforcement. Both Walz and Frey have been fierce critics of the Trump administration's response to the death of Renee Good. Opening an investigation into them is certainly a dramatic escalation in this battle between the White House and these leaders. While the DOJ is now investigating the conduct of Democratic state and local leaders, they made clear they are not investigating the officer who actually shot and killed Renee Good. Now, earlier this week, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche said in a statement, quote, "There is currently no basis for a criminal civil rights investigation." The DOJ's Civil Rights Division typically launches investigations into law enforcement related shootings to make sure that officers did not breach the rights of the shooting victim. Blanche's statement came amid a flurry of resignations in the Minnesota U.S. Attorney's Office, as we reported. At least 6 prosecutors left after pressure to focus the probe of the ICE officer shooting onto Good's widow, Becca Good, and the actions of Renee Good herself. When reached for comment about the investigation, Governor Tim Walz did not confirm it to CNN, but accused the federal government of, in his words, weaponizing the justice system and threatening political opponents. He called that a dangerous authoritarian tactic. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey just released a statement that reads in part, "This is an obvious attempt to intimidate me for standing up for Minneapolis, our local law enforcement, and our residents against the chaos and danger this administration has brought to our streets." Now, news of the investigation came as Deputy Attorney General Blanche and FBI Director Kash Patel were on the ground in Minneapolis. The FBI director posting these photos to social media along with the caption that read in part, "This team is working 24/7 here, cracking down on violent rioters." And this was the scene today at the Whipple Federal Building, the epicenter of protests in Minneapolis. The building serving as a staging facility for ICE agents, DHS officers, and Customs and Border Protection personnel. This all comes one day after President Trump threatened to invoke the Insurrection Act in Minnesota. Late this morning, he issued a social media post that read in part, "The governor and mayor don't know what to do. They have totally lost control and are currently being rendered useless. If and when I am forced to act, it will be solved quickly and effectively." This afternoon, he was asked what the trigger would be for the Insurrection Act to be used in Minnesota.
It's been used a lot. And if I needed it, I'd use it. I don't think there's any reason right now to use it. But if I needed it, I'd use it. It's very powerful.
Well, for the latest on the investigation to Governor Walz and Mayor Frey, we start with Caitlin Collins, CNN's chief White House correspondent and anchor of The Source. What more are you learning about this?
What we know so far is that a grand jury has issued subpoenas. So this investigation is real. It is underway. It's definitely in the beginning stages based on what we know. But what we've also learned tonight is we don't believe that Mayor Frey or Governor Walz's offices have actually been served these subpoenas. Neither of them had gotten any notice about this investigation until we had reached out to our sources and then reached out to them for comment on this. And so the scope of it is not entirely clear. But what we do know is that it's around allegations of obstructing federal law enforcement. And that's really just been pointing back to nothing they've done physically, but the words that they have said. What we've heard from Mayor Frey, what we've heard from Governor Walz, who have been very outspoken and critical of the federal surge that has been happening in their state. About 3,000 agents are actually there on the ground.
It was the mayor who that first night or earlier the week said, "Get the F out of."
And then Governor Tim Walz this week said, encourage people to record ICE officers and agents as they were carrying out these enforcement operations and telling them to call 911 if necessary. Now, the administration has been very critical of that, but whether or not that warrants an investigation or that meets the standard of criminal behavior, obviously it remains to be seen how the administration is going to prove that.
Governor Walz gave a speech and which he said, protest peacefully, don't, and the mayor, I think, recently gave a speech in which he said also, don't fall into the trap of, giving them what they want and creating violence. So,
yeah, and the administration has argued that they are helping contribute to this and make it a hostile environment for these ICE agents and federal officers who are still on the ground. We've heard the exact opposite, obviously, from Governor Walz and Mayor Frey, who have said, no, they just don't want all of these federal agents inside their cities. They don't think that they're necessary, and they think they're the ones who are actually making the tensions on the ground worse, which they say were building way before the shooting death by that ICE agent of Renee Good. And so we'll see where this this goes, and if they actually get these subpoenas, hopefully learn more about the investigation.
Again, we'll see you on The Source, 9 o'clock. The federal former prosecutor, Jeffrey Toobin, joins me right now, also best-selling author. So, Jeff, has the governor or the mayor done anything, as far as you can tell, to warrant a federal investigation, or is this just, the thing that this White House would do, whether it's political retribution or just, sowing chaos?
This week began with news that the Justice Department was criminally investigating Jerome Powell, the head of the Federal Reserve, basically to coerce him into lowering interest rates. Now the week is ending with news of a criminal investigation of these two Minnesota officials who are trying to protect their city and state.
Trump is launching a fresh political attack tonight aimed at Minnesota, specifically targeting one of the state's largest city mayors and its governor. Both are Democrats and longtime critics of Trump, especially since he began escalating federal actions in the state. But while Trump is going on the offensive, he's also suffered a significant loss in court. In a major ruling, a federal judge has effectively shut down ICE's main operation in Minnesota. In that sense, Governor Walz and Mayor Frey have gotten a bit of payback. The judge ruled that ICE can no longer carry out many of the actions it's been using during its current operation. According to reporting, a U.S. district judge ordered federal law enforcement involved in Minnesota's immigration crackdown to stop pepper spraying, detaining, and pulling over peaceful protesters. The preliminary injunction applies to those participating in Operation Metro Surge, a controversial immigration effort launched under Trump's administration as part of his push to detain and deport immigrants nationwide. The ruling makes clear that federal agents are not allowed to take action against peaceful demonstrators, including those protesting ICE itself. This doesn't mean ICE is completely barred from enforcing immigration law in Minnesota, but it does mean they can't operate in the aggressive, authoritarian way they have been. In essence, the judge is saying that while ICE may continue lawful immigration enforcement, the version of ICE shaped and encouraged by Trump, one acting like an unchecked force against protesters, is not permitted to continue behaving that way.